Hello and welcome to our series on breaking down poses. So this is the very first one of the series. It's called Downward Facing Dog. Downward Facing Dog, you would be hard pressed to find a yoga class that didn't include this. And so many people make many mistakes trying to get into position. So we'll go and talk about the position of Downward Facing Dog in a moment. But firstly, when we come down onto the mats, our hands need to be really wide, like so. So the palms are wide into the earth. And we'll go down onto the mat in a moment, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Also, this part of the elbow is the bit that should be facing forward. So let me move this out the way. So when we have our palms down, we externally rotate. So we're really strong into the pose. So it's a really strong base that we're looking at. Now, downward facing dog stimulates lots of muscles, especially in the backs of the legs, the thighs, really fine tunes the muscles in the feet. It's a fantastic pose and the body brings in energy. So when you're in that perfect inverted V, you've got that wonderful energy flowing up from your fingertips all the way up, down past your head, down into the thighs. It's a fantastic pose and it's usually part of a sun salutation and it goes from one pose to another. So firstly, we're going to just warm up a little bit, not too much. We're going to come into an all fours position. So coming down onto the mat, and remember what I was saying about your hands, nice and wide. If you have any wrist issues, you can go onto your knuckles, but palms wide is preferable. Or you could just roll up the mat slightly so there's not too much pressure, a little bit of padding there for the hands. So fingers nice and wide, palms nice and wide. And the positioning of the hands, your shoulders aren't directly over your wrists like so. You've got that slight little curve going down. So the palms are down nice and flat. The longest fingers are pointing to the top of the mat. The knees are hip width apart. So if you came to the knees, you should be able to put two fists here between the knees. That's the size of the knees apart. So nice wide palms, knees hip width apart, and this is into like a tabletop position. And from here, you can go into your downward facing dog. So let's just do a little bit of a warm up first. So let's dip the spine, look up at the sky, inhale. And as you exhale, round through the back, arching the spine, dangle the neck, and really push up to the sky. This is called cow cat. So we inhale as we lengthen and look up at the sky, dipping the spine, and exhale as we round and arch through the spine. Let's do two more. Breathe in as you float the crown of the head high, look up at the sky, and breathe out as you push the earth away and arch the spine, dangle the neck. Let's do one more. Inhale, lengthen through the spine, look up at the sky. Nice strong arms. Exhale, round through the back and arch the spine. So with your hands in correct position, with the eyes of the elbows pointing to the top fingers, nice and strong, let's tuck the toes. Let's tuck the toes. Now let's push up into a perfect inverted V. So scoop the hips up high, melt the head between the arms. Don't worry too much if you can't get your heels down. That will come with time. So with nice wide palms, we've got that perfect inverted V. So we're going all the way along from the crown of the head, all the way up from the fingertips, all the way up to the spine, then down the legs to the heels. Take a few breaths. So as we inhale, scoop up through the thighs. Really big breath. And as you exhale, try to melt the heels to the ground. Inhale, scoop up. The energy flows up from the fingers all the way up. And then as you exhale, melt down. And again, inhaling. And as you exhale, melt down. Lovely. And again, inhaling. And as you exhale, melt down. Let's just place our knees down on the floor and just do a little rotation here of the wrists. So we'll just do a little recap first. The palms are nice and wide. The wrists are really open and the palms are down into the earth. And your arm is on a nice level like that. So it's not completely like this. You've got a little bit of a distance. The knees are roughly 2 fist distance apart. And when you come up, you're into that perfect inverted V. You do about 5 breaths in downward facing dog. So we'll do a few more and then we'll add it into a sun salutation. So let's take our palms, put them down into the earth, longest fingers pointing to the top of the mat, knees hip width apart, that slight little curve from the shoulder down to the wrist, nice and strong, eyes look into the floor. Tuck into the toes, and then lift up the spine, lift up the hips, try to melt the heels, dangle the head between the biceps. So let's inhale, scoop up through the thighs, melt in the chest, exhale, melt the heels. Lovely. And again, inhaling, exhaling.
And again, inhaling. Exhaling. 2 more, inhaling. And each time try and melt the heels down a little bit closer to the earth. 1 more, inhaling. And then let's come down onto our knees and just give those wrists a little bit of a release. Wonderful. So you may feel a little bit in the shoulder, so it's really good to push up away from the mat and really open up and have that strong base. I'll show you a few of the don'ts rather than the do's, and then we'll add the downward facing dog into like a similar to a sun salutation. So the don'ts are the hands are over here like so you're really impacting on the wrists. Preferably you come back just a little bit. The don'ts as well are having the feet too far back and being like this, which isn't a downward facing dog, or having the head looking up like so and your chest isn't in alignment, or rounding through too far down and the legs and the hands are too far apart. So they're the don'ts. So the do's, nice wide palms, nice strong arms, so externally rotating and pushing down into the earth, holding it here. Knees hip width apart roughly, tucking the toes. So when you push up into that inverted V, the head hangs between the arms, the neck is long. So this is a lovely, lovely pose. The toes are pointing forwards, the hips are high, nice and strong. So we inhale, scoop up, exhale, melt down. So it's nice and strong. So we're almost in an inverted V. Now from this position, you should be able to reach back and touch your toes. That means you're in correct alignment. If your alignment was incorrect, that's too difficult, and then you're putting pressure on your shoulders. So that's just a really indicator to the pose. So we're in a perfect inverted V. The palms are wide, you've got that nice length, shoulders are strong, you puff up through your chest. As you inhale, you scoop up as if someone's pulling a belt around your hips, pulling them up, and as you exhale, you melt your heels down to the earth. Let's come into a standing position at the top of the mat. This is mountain pose, and we will be working through this pose as well as we go through the basics. So standing tall, shoulders down and away from the ears, lengthen the spine. Take a few moments just to root into the earth. Now stand tall like a mountain. Bring your hands to your heart space, your palms are together. This is called Angelina Mudra. It's a connection of the right and the left sides of your body. So just holding it here nice and strong. Lovely. Let's inhale up to the sky, extended mountain pose. This is also known as a high prayer. Exhale, bend at the hips, bend at the waist, and melt down to the earth, forward fold, dangling the head, the neck, the shoulders. So just let go. The crown of the head should be pointing down to the earth, and the neck and the shoulders should be hanging. So this is all part of a sun salutation, which we will work through. Come up into a halfway lift, so slide up through the shins, let the shoulders melt away from the ears. We have length from the top of the head down to the lumbar spine, nice flat back. So the back is nice and flat. And when we do this pose, we'll talk a little bit more about it. Melt your chest to your thighs, dangle your neck, softness in your breath. Normally in a sun salutation, you'd be going straight into a plank, but for these purposes, we're going into an all fours tabletop. So place your hands down, come back into that all fours position. What's the placing of your knees? Are they hip width apart? Are your palms wide? Have you got that right angle of your arms coming up from the wrist to the shoulders? Are the eyes of the elbows pointing out? Is it a strong base? Lovely. Push down strong into the earth, tuck your toes, and then push up into a downward facing dog. Scoop up the hips, melt the heels. As you scoop up as if someone's pulling the belt up through your thighs. And as you exhale, melt your heels to the ground. Can we do that again? Inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling. 2 more. And again. Last one. There's normally 5, in fact. Inhaling. Let's melt your knees to the earth. Come into a comfortable position, whether it's kneeling or whether it's with your legs out in front. And let's just do a little rotation of the wrists, because the wrists take quite a lot of pressure when you're doing downward facing dogs. Just give the arms a big stretch, rotate the shoulders. Wonderful. So downward facing dog is a pose that you find in most yoga classes,
And it's a really nice pose, and it also becomes a resting pose. So when you're working through sun salutation, we'd rest with those 5 breaths there. But when you very first do it, you're thinking rest, but it actually is a resting pose, and it's a fantastic pose. It brings energy up through your fingers, all the way up and down into your thighs. It stretches out all this whole area here, the hamstrings, the calves, and the feet as well. It's a beautiful pose. So let's just counterpose that by being seated first. Inhale up to the sky, beautiful breath, beautiful stretch, and lift up the knees slightly, and then exhale, melt towards the toes. Breathe in, and then just let go, softness in your breath. Lovely, slide along through the shins, into the thighs, and relax the neck and the shoulders. So that is a beginning of downward facing dog, which is used in lots of poses. So remember, just to recap, we're in an inverted V. When we're in that V shape, palms are wide, you've got that slight lengthening from there. You should be able to touch your toes if you were to reach back. Your head dangles, your neck's not up like that, your chest isn't like that. You can bend the knees if that's easier, but as long as you've got the correct alignment. And it's a really nice pose. It brings blood supply to your head, and it's a strong, strong pose. So I hope that's helped you look a little bit more into downward facing dog, and it's like the basic steps into yoga. Next week, we'll be going through some more poses. We'll be looking at chair pose, mountain pose, forward fold, and we'll build up into the sun salutation step by step. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next week.